scared? And the general answer is no, we don't, because we're investigators. But in our heads we're thinking, yes, yes we do. Do we ever get scared? Fear is a basic emotion commonly induced by threat, which can cause changes in the brain and organ function, and ultimately always has an effect on one's behaviour. Freezing in fear. Running and hiding. Or confrontation. Something that we all do on an investigation. It's accepted that communication runs exclusively through language or visual communication. So I've got a quick video to show you, and it's a good representation of that. It's a video of someone showing a threat to strangers and how they react to that threat. So as you can see, the threat isn't real. They're just told that something's wrong and they're reacting.
Run. 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 Run.
So that's a general reaction to fear. What these guys are doing is they've got something, they're being told to react. They don't know what they're reacting to, but when someone else is reacting, you're going to react too. I mean, I know this was also probably filmed in the States, and they react differently to what we would. It kind of reminds me of the cat videos where the cats are reacting to the cucumbers on the ground, and the cats freak out and jump everywhere. I tried that with my cat, and he did not give a shit. And I'm suspecting that it's because the other cats live in countries that have snakes. What about our other senses? Does fear actually have a smell? So I'm talking about pheromones. Can we leave a scent behind that others can react to? And you only have to take our dogs for a walk in order to understand that they communicate with smell as well. So why not us? It has long been thought that humans lack the same odour sensing organs that animals have, which is true in a sense. We do have the vomeronasal organ, which is found in other mammals. However, humans, this organ is not connected directly to the brain. There are, however, findings published in the Journal of Psychological Science in November 2012 that suggest that humans do, in fact, communicate via smell, just as much as other animals. Guns Seaman and colleagues of Utrecht University in the Netherlands collected armpit sweat of 10 men while they watched frightening scenes from The Shining, or repulsive clips from MTV's Jackass. Next, the researchers asked 36 women to take visual tests while they unknowingly inhaled the scent of men's sweat. When the women sniffed the fear sweat, they opened their eyes wide in a scared expression, while those smelling the disgusted sweat scrunched their face in a repulsive grimace, which is not an unlikely reaction to smelling someone's sweat. However, do remember that it's the bacteria in sweat that smells and not just the sweat itself. The team chose men as the sweat donors as women are better receivers at sensitive smells, apparently. The findings suggested humans can communicate at least some emotion. The researchers say our research suggests emotional chemo signals can be potential contributors to emotional contagion in situations involving dense crowds. Can certain sounds induce feelings of fear? So we know we all watch horror movies, right? Yeah. So they have sounds that are used in order to make ourselves feel scared. Such as this one. We're all probably familiar with these sounds. So obviously if you hear that for quite a long time, you'll kind of feel a little bit uneasy. Infrasound, or sounds below 20 Hz, are virtually impossible for humans to hear. They can still cause psychological effects and can still make windows, doors, and even loose objects vibrate seemingly without reason. While there is still no definitive evidence to support claims, many researchers believe that infrasounds can have a negative influence on your mood. Infrasounds have also allegedly been used by composers, filmmakers, and even the military to induce feelings of dread. And it's actually playing now, the sound. So you won't be able to hear it, but I can kind of tell you that while I was making this PowerPoint, listening to this with headphones, I kind of, it did make me feel a little uneasy. I don't know whether that was a mind over matter thing, but can other factors contribute to the onset of fear? Fear is not just about the behavioural pheromones though. There are some factors that can be believed to contribute to the onset of fear. Dopamine, the hormone that we all know is normally responsible for making us feel lovey-dovey and romantic. If dopamine happens to reach the wrong part of the brain, it can begin to react in a negative and arouse feelings of terror and dread. This was discovered when scientists delivered dopamine to the rare regions of the nucleus accumbens, a region associated with both reward and dread. Being a small brain region, it was concluded that the difference between pleasure and terror is only a matter of a few millimeters. Yohimbi, often used as an ingredient in prescription medicine for erectile dysfunctions. Yohimbi can often have a good or bad effects depending on the dosage and the person taking it. Almost mirroring dopamine, it can also induce stress, anxiety, and panic attacks, and in rare cases even hallucinations, proving furthermore that the brain's perspective, there is a thin line between good and the bad. So this is also used in performance enhancing drugs as well. So you might have it in it and you might not even know. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, is a protein in humans that is said to be responsible for how well we cope with trauma and fears. However, it is in fact can help to solidify traumatic memories and is more likely responsible for intense traumatic flashbacks that make you relive many of the moments you'd love to forget. Caffeine and exercise are thought to increase the secretion of BDNF as well. Corticotropin releasing hormone, or CRH, is a peptide that acts in specific receptors in your brain, which are responsible for, but not exclusive to, triggering feelings of reward and euphoria when we consume too much alcohol. As I'm sure some of us are aware, an overload of CRH can lead to feelings of panic and paranoia and regret. Research has shown that abnormally high levels of CRH can be found in the cerebrospinal fluid in suicide victims. Noxious smells. This is one of my pet pet peeves as well, because whenever I smell a bad smell, I want to flee or hide, escape this situation. Yeah, so while you may not associate bad smell with fear necessarily, if you think about it, if the smell is bad enough, it can make you feel physically ill, and your brain's natural reaction is to make you flee the area. And while some of these examples may appear to be a little more extreme than others, it would definitely be rare to find yourself in a situation where they all exist together. It's fair enough to make us believe that we're having a paranormal experience. So if you remember at the beginning of the week I said a small survey, and some of the answers were quite vague to promote a little bit of discussion as well. And the first one was, what place or building type would you most consider to be the most haunted? And in my head I had an answer what everybody was going to say. And it is, in fact, between the differences, we've got a historical building, abandoned prison, a hospital, an asylum, a private residence, or something else. Majority chose an asylum. And I don't have a definitive answer as to why majority went for the asylum, but in my opinion, I think it's because it's more popular in the media as well. When we think of what might be haunted, we think of King's Seat, we think of Waverley Hills, we think of places that people might have gone to and hadn't experienced and talked about it. Next question. Would you ever consider investigating an allegedly haunted location alone? Again, most people said no. And I'd just like to add that, as investigators, we probably have a different opinion on these answers as well. I kept these questions kind of a little bit vague and non-specific, because I know that as an investigator we'd probably have a different answer. Well, not necessarily, but we would see the questions in a different light as well. Question 3. Would you ever investigate an allegedly haunted location with a group of strangers? And I was quite surprised, a lot of people said yes. I think going on an investigation, there's a lot of trust involved. I have done a few solo investigations with the group and I did enjoy them, but I also prefer doing team investigations, because you know when you're going into a place where you might have a little bit of apprehension and you don't know your surroundings properly, yeah, it is good to have a team on your side that you know has got your back. And with strangers, you can't always trust them. But majority said yes anyway. Question 4. Would you ever consider investigating an allegedly haunted location with a group of friends? No surprises there, most people said yes. A few said no, but maybe they don't have good friends. Question 5. Are haunted buildings more frightening during the day, at night, or no different? So it was a bit of a loaded question as well, because in my opinion, a haunted building is always going to be a haunted building, whether it's night or day. But I was correct in thinking that most people put at night, because that's what people like to associate with ghosts and hauntings, and it's generally scarier at night. Question 6. Do you believe in spirits and ghosts? Most people said yes. That's why we're here, I guess. Question 7. You're on an investigation and you believe you've seen a full-bodied apparition. You're most likely to freeze in fear, scream, run, yell for help, faint, investigate further, or none. Ghosts don't exist. So I'm glad no one said faint, because that's quite hard to deal with. But I was quite pleased to see that majority said that they would investigate further, because that's what we like to do. Like to find out what it was that we thought we saw. Question 8. Do you believe that spirits or ghosts can harm the living? So the answer would be yes, no, some but not all. Majority said some but not all. So there are some people that believe that ghosts can harm us. Some believe that they can't, but majority believes that it can go either way, and depending on the spirit. Question 9, do you think spirits or ghosts can sense fear? I thought this was quite an interesting one. Majority said yes, so that's the point of my investigation, of my research here, and that's going into investigation. Are my feelings of anxiety, not knowing what the building's like, not knowing what to expect, is that going to have an effect on my experience in the investigation? Majority said yes. Question 10, do you think that going into a paranormal investigation in a frightened state of mind will increase the potential for paranormal activity to occur? Majority said yes. So that's basically what I was trying to find out. So with that in mind, let's put ourselves in a situation where we end up, for whatever reason, being in a building that is allegedly haunted by a ghost. For most, at the very least, there is an instant level of expectation to the experience. Something paranormal, and furthermore for some people. There is a certain level of apprehension and anxiety when it comes to considering these expectations, and this is where things can get interesting. Imagine being alone in this haunted building. There is a level of vulnerability when it comes to being alone, especially if you consider also going solo as a bit of a risk. As fear gets the better of you, every shadow that may pass, every noise that isn't your own, and every foreign smell ends up playing tricks on you. This makes it very easy for some to come into the paranormal conclusion. After all, there is no one else there at the time to convince you otherwise. Now consider the same scenario, but in a group situation. There is safety in numbers, which is always reassuring. However, it's always safe to assume that each person in the group has a different tolerance to their surroundings. Each person has a different threshold as to what scares them and how much fear can have an effect on their behaviour. But perhaps this can be challenged by both the behaviour and, if science is correct, even the pheromones produced by others. Have you ever been in a group situation where the overreaction of a group member is far worse than the actual stimuli? This is a representation of my mother as well.
Jesus Christ! It's like Piccadilly Circus in here!
As I say, it reminded me of my mother as a kid, because she used to let me watch horror movies, and her reaction to the jump scares were far worse than the jump scares themselves. It was exactly like that. So I'm not about to go forth and say that fear pheromones and personal behaviour is directly responsible for every case of paranormal activity, especially when considering that most paranormal investigators would become excited over any hint of activity before fear takes hold and sends us running. And it's just because recent studies strongly suggest that humans can in fact smell fear, there is no direct link between smelling fear and experiencing hallucinations. I will, however, agree that the presence of fear in any situation can alter perceptions, which can often make situations worse and bring people to the conclusion beyond the rational. So what is the link between fear and hauntings? Some believe that ghosts or spirits can feed or sense strong emotions, which they can use as a vessel or a power source to help manifest themselves. I'm not against this theory entirely, but I always personally believe that when it comes down to fear being a basic emotion, and that there is and always will be natural instinct to fear what we don't understand. I'm sure we can all agree on that. Hauntings is not always from malevolent or negative spirits, and yet some would run screaming at the manifestation of one of their own loved ones. Why? Because not everyone can comprehend seeing something that many years of social conditioning has taught us. That nothing more than made up fairy tales are more inclined to believe that fear is on its own creates a spirit no more than the spirit creates fear. But rather it's a part of a much larger cocktail of contributing elements when it comes to the genuine haunting. So as an investigator, do we get scared? No. Of course we do. Of course we do. Like I said, we've done solo investigations and we've done team investigations. And for me, I'll put my hand up and admit, when it's a building that I don't know and I don't know the surroundings, I don't know what's in that room and it's all dark and it's not lit up, I don't have my torch, I'm going to wait for somebody else to go to the other room first. But as investigators, we have to stay grounded, be aware of our emotions, and do our best not to let fear get the better of us. And that's it. Any questions?
I'm short, don't worry.
Okay, then I get that one as well.
I put a loaded question, kind of. Do you reckon that maybe if people are more open to the idea of that, then not that their mind will get the better of them, but that they'll be open to seeing or hearing a little bit more and provide more close up to it?
So, yeah, what are you saying that if we don't go into investigation, if we go into investigation under a calm state, you're saying, or?
Yeah, or like.
Yeah, I think so. For an example, the school that Mark was talking about, when I first went there, I feel like I didn't know the place very well. I believe we were more susceptible to bumps and bangs and, what was that sort of thing. But the more we went there, the more we became comfortable with the place, and as it seemed, maybe the less we experienced. So, and on the other hand, solo investigations, we did the Puanui house in Howick, and being alone, your senses are heightened. You know that every bump and bang is not you, and you kind of think, well, what the hell was that? If it's not me, what is it? So yes, you do go and investigate, but it opens yourself up a little bit more as well. Yep.
Do you think most people chose the asylum as the most haunted place because there seems to be at least some ideology around ghosts being spirits not at rest, or spirits who encounter lots of trauma, so that we assume people who have locked away and lived in an asylum would have experienced lots of trauma, therefore they're more likely to turn into...
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's quite a big part of it as well, and I think that's where the stories come from as well.
Yeah.
And with Chinese whispers as well, those stories get exaggerated as well.
How do you deal with, going back to the Howard investigation where the torch came down the stairs?
Yep.
How do you go back there and not be in that heightened state because you had something caught on camera that was a bit questionable, shall we say?
I think it...
How do you, you say that you try to stay calm and stuff?
It's curiosity more than anything.
Yeah.
I say, as investigators, it's kind of our duty to go in and find the answers, as best as we can. And we're not so sure that whatever threw the torch at and how it was an angry spirit or anything like that. So, it could have just been curious as to what, assuming that it was a spirit that threw it as well. We did a lot of investigation further to, see what it could have been, and as far as I know, we still haven't come to a conclusion. But it's what we do, it's what we like. There is the fear element to it, but that's why we do it as well. We do like being scared sometimes.